Alicia Keys, Empire State of Mind Part 2, 18 minutes past 8 o'clock. Good evening. Let's talk cider now on the show. I'm a big fan. I think you probably realise that by now. I won't go into the detail as to just how much of the proper stuff I drank over Christmas. Needless to say, it was an awful lot. Anyway, it was very enjoyable, all this stuff, and went to every single farm to pick it up, which was very nice indeed. I mentioned this on the show before Christmas, saying that I was going around to a lot of the local cider farms. Very nice indeed, and you kind of get to meet the farmers, or if they're not there, then you get to meet maybe the shop staff on the farm shops and all that. You get a feel for what the whole place is like, that's kind of the enjoyment I get out of it as well, is knowing the people who've been making this cider and why they love it and talking to them about their passions for making cider. Someone else who is very passionate about cider is a man called Tim Beer. I know he's gone into the wrong alcohol, really, hasn't he? But anyway, he loves cider, and I've been speaking to him a little bit about his passion and why he's created a Facebook page to protect real, as he calls it, cider.
Hello, my name's Tim Beer. I'm from West Dorset, little area that formerly was Somerset until they chopped the borders around. Cider maker, Marshwood Vale Cider. Been a lover of cider all my life, ever since I can remember, to be honest.
You said there about this little exclave of Somerset that was, which is now Dorset. Do you feel like a Somerset man because you know that the area you live in used to be part of the county?
Well, I was born a mile and a half away from where I am now, which was Somerset. So I'm born in Somerset, but I'm confused because I was born on the Dorset, Somerset, Devon borders. So I got a combination of all three bits of accent, but I'm Somerset man.
That's good to hear. That's what we like, Tim. So let's talk a bit about cider then, because it seems right now you're here. When was your first taste of the stuff?
Probably when I was about 8 or 9 year old, to be honest. My mother used to take me up to the pub and I'd sit there with half a cider shandy, packet of crisps in the corner quietly. And then as I got older, I was allowed to have less and less lemonade. And by the time I was 14, I was drinking cider properly.
And do you remember it being fantastic from the start? Or cause sometimes you try alcohol for the first time, oh, God, I can't understand why grown-ups like this.
Never really worried about it.
Yeah.
I didn't think about it, to be honest. You just drank it because that's what you did.
So what is it about cider then? Why do you love it still now? Here you are, so many years on.
Well, yeah, 59 years now. I've always loved cider. It's a natural product. If you make it the way I make it with wild fermentations. There's no yeast involved anywhere. I don't use hardly any chemicals whatsoever. It's a good natural drink, which unfortunately in this day and age has been messed around with. They put water with it and artificial yeast and flavourings and still want to call it cider.
Oh, so what is a proper cider then? What would you call a real proper cider? How would you make it?
A proper cider is freshly collected apples, never picked, always collect them off the floor of the orchards. They go back, they get pressed, they get fermented out naturally with as little water involved as possible. I don't use water whatsoever. If I want to prime a pump, I use apple juice or I use cider. So there's no water in contact with my apples at any stage, really. That's proper cider. Minimum 95% juice, I would say. The norm nowadays is a minimum of 35% for the big boys. So, all you people out there that are drinking cider think you're drinking cider. You're not. You're drinking water with a bit of apple chucked in, a bit of glucose, a bit of flavouring, a bit of fizz. Very
different to what you and I actually would call a proper cider.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. Real cider's apple juice.
Yeah. Okay, so this fermentation that I just want to go into the scientific bit about cider as well before we come and talk about the beauty of it. So the fermentation, that is what makes it alcoholic. There'll be people going, yeah, we know all this, but some people who won't know how this works. So why does leaving, this apple juice, this freshly pressed apple juice, why does that then turn alcoholic?
Well, basically, every surface in the world has got yeast on it of some description. Apples are loaded with yeast. In the bottom of the apple, in the eye, there's always yeast in there. So when you press, the yeast goes with the juice. And the natural thing that yeast wants to do is to gobble up all the sugar in the juice and convert the sugar into alcohol. So it's a natural fermentation, natural process.
And the yeast is a is bacteria?
No. Yeasts and bacteria are two totally different things. Bacteria tend to spoil. Yeasts will actually ferment out nice and clean, providing the apples are clean and providing the vessel that you're fermenting out in is clean. When you start off with, you'll end up with a clean cider.
So the yeast itself is a tiny microorganism, is
yes,
it?
Yes, it is. Yeah. It's more on the it's more a fungal sort of side of life rather than bacterial.
I see. So then this takes on all that sugar, and as you can imagine, apple juice has got a lot of sugar in it naturally.
Yeah.
And then that converts to alcohol. So how do you get it right then? Because surely you could just leave it and it would become, this very, very strong alcoholic drink. When do you know the time is right to say, right, that is now a nice tasting, nice strength cider?
Well, to be honest, with my cider, I let it all ferment out right to dry.
Right, okay.
So every bit of sugar is gone. There's no sugar left whatsoever. It's bone dry, proper cider. And that's how all the old boys used to drink it years ago. And there's still a good following for it nowadays. There's still a lot of people that prefer proper old-fashioned dry cider. But what we do for the modern tastes is we add sugar. If we add sugar, we tend to pasteurize it to stop it re-fermenting. Otherwise, it'll just carry on and ferment out the sugar that you've just put back in.
So pasteurizing removes the yeast, is that?
Pasteurizing kills the yeast.
Right, yeah.
Basically, it stabilizes it. So you've got to put it into a container, i.e. a bottle, and put a lid on it. No more yeast can get in. Nothing can spoil. Nothing can go wrong. That, again, to me, is quite a natural thing to pasteurize. It makes the product safe. A lot of people out there still don't like pasteurization. They say that it shouldn't be pasteurised. If you're going to go that route, then personally, I would use sucralose, which is made from sugar, but it doesn't ferment. So you can add that to your heart's content, get it to the sweetness you want, package it up, send it on. You know it ain't going to ferment again. It's safe.
Okay. So because if you go to the cider farms, you see you've got the choice of dry, medium, sweet, and various different choices in between those three. Yeah. So is that just different levels of fermentation then? Because a sweet one, is that still got a bit of sugar left in it?
Well, it depends. If you're doing what they call keeving, which is a French process, then you end up with a natural sweetness in the cider. It's a bit of hard work. A lot of people have got it cracked. They know exactly what they're doing. You end up with a naturally sweet cider, so you'd end up with a naturally medium cider as well, if need be. 90% of the makers nowadays will rely on the fact of get it out to dry, and then they'll add the sugar back in, they'll add the sweetener back in to get to the sugar levels that they require.
So it's almost like you're losing the sugar to get the alcohol, and you're adding it back
and then
in
you're
to
adding
get the flavour.
Back in again to get your flavours.
I see.
Because you're looking for stabilisation. You need to stabilise the cider. And the only way to get a stable cider is to ferment it out properly.
I get it. Okay. So for you then, you've said that dry cider is what the old boys used to drink, to use your words. Is that what you drink, dry cider?
Always dry cider. I love dry cider. Drier the better.
Why is that?
It's just a natural product. There's nothing in it. There's apple juice and that's it.
Tim Beer there from the Protection of Real Cider. That's his Facebook page that he runs. We'll talk more about that later on the show here on BBC Somerset. Lovely to meet Tim and talk a bit more about cider. We'll hear about some of the other sciences that go with cider and various other things you can do and why real cider needs protecting.
New to BBC One. Dances for everyone.
This show is special.
It's your soul. It's who you are.
There's nothing like it.
Amy Winehouse, that is Rehab. You're listening to Connected. I'm Charlie Taylor, here until 10 o'clock tonight. Loads coming up on the show. 9 till 10, we're doing episodes 3 and 4 of Dawn of England, which if you missed it, if you've only just started listening to BBC Somerset in the last 6 or 7 months, you won't have heard it, unless you've been online to listen to it there, but likelihood is I'm guessing you haven't. What it is, basically, is a documentary / radio drama of the history of King Alfred, in particular his links with Somerset and the look at the impact that he's had on the county today as well. Bear in mind he was around 1200 years ago. He is still having an impact here in the county and in the country as well. So we'll talk more about that a bit later after 9 o'clock today. We're hearing episode 3 and 4 looking at the Battle of Edington, where he defeated the Danes famously. So all of that coming up on the show. And that's episode 4. Episode 3 is all about Athelney and his time spent there as well. So well worth listening into that, all coming up very shortly. But first of all, let's head back to Tim Beer. We've been speaking a little bit about the sorts of cider which he classes as real cider. He started a Facebook page to protect what he calls real cider. I suppose in the same way that real ale is different to, the lagers and things that we can get in pubs and in the supermarkets. But he wants to protect real cider, stuff that is 90% or more apple juice rather than stuff that is perhaps diluted or uses the syrup of apple juice rather than proper pressed apple juice. So that's what he's talking about. I asked him a little bit about his favourite types of cider. I also had a quick look through the BBC archives and found a fantastic film about what is, we think, I've spoken to a historian about it, we think it's Coates in Nailsea, which is a cider factory in Nailsea. It's actually where Adge Cutler worked. It's a great film. If you can find it on BBC Archive, they tweeted it not long ago, actually. Search BBC Archive, Somerset cider pressing, and you'll be able to see it. Anyway, I've got the audio of it here. This is what it sounds like. The video's fantastic as well. We'll hear a little bit of this archive, and then we'll be back with Tim Beard, who's telling us about his love of real cider.
An apple crop that hasn't been equalled for many years. That's the verdict of fruit growers throughout Britain. And as from hundreds of orchards is harvested autumn's favourite fruit, the pressing season comes to Somerset. The season when all talk is of cider, and thousands of tons of apples are destined for pulping.
It is literally just down to sugar levels, and because I've always drunk dry cider, if you give me cider there's some ciders out there that are labelled as dry, and yet they got a sweetener in them, which leads the public astray because the public think they're drinking dry, but they're not. They're actually drinking an off dry. I can taste it straight away. I can just pick up that little bit of sweetness and go, no, that is not dry. And I don't know why people do it. If you make a dry cider, it should be dry. If you want to make a medium cider, put some sweetener in it. Make it medium.
I suppose it's like putting sugar in tea, isn't it? I don't drink tea with sugar in it. If someone accidentally puts the sugar in my tea, I instantly know.
You would instantly know it, and so would I.
Yeah.
Because I'm the same with my tea. I don't put none in there neither.
Yeah, exactly. It changes the taste a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, so for you, with someone who's got quite a sophisticated, clearly, palate to do with cider, you can tell instantly.
Yeah.
Okay, so with the dry cider then, I suppose he's got that sort of tannin at the end of it, isn't it? It's tannins which can make it.
Well, that's coming from the cider apples. Proper cider apples are loaded with tannins. There's stacks of tannins in proper cider apples. You can always tell. Again, Eastern County cider, there's no tannin. Very, very light in flavour. No tannin in the background because all they've got is dessert apples to work with. We're a bit spoilt down here. We've got all the cider apples. We've got all the flavours that we can use as single varieties, or we can make into really good blends. So yeah, we are spoilt. You do get the tannins in the back. You've got acidity as well. Acidity is quite pronounced in a lot of ciders. The modern cider drinker is edging away from that sort of thing. I think they're heading back towards a easier to drink cider. Hence, unfortunately, there's a lot of the fruit type drinks knocking about that they put the label on as being cider. It ain't cider. Cider's made from apples. Quite simple, really. You add anything to it, as far as HMRC is concerned, as soon as you add anything to it, it becomes made wine. So therefore, it's no longer cider. They shouldn't be allowed to use the term.
That's interesting, isn't it? So the government collects taxes on cider differently to other alcohols.
That's right, yeah.
And so anything which has got, say, raspberry in, for example.
Yeah. As soon as you got that in, it then becomes made wine.
And that's being taxed as wine.
Rather
than cider, even though it says cider on the bottle.
Even though it says cider on the bottle.
How confusing. So people trying to cash in, perhaps, because cider's popular.
Massively.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing, and that is all it's about. And if you also look at the bottles, most of it's 4%, because then that gets into the lowest duty band that they can get into.
Right, okay. So what's a proper cider? What sort of percentage would a real cider be in then?
The season just gone. Every cider that I've got at home fermenting away quietly at home, the lowest I've got this year is 6.7. The highest is 8.6.
God, that's like almost a weak wine, isn't it? 8.6 is a strong drink.
Yeah, it is getting on for it, yeah.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to drink too much
of
that
But, to be honest with you, if you see anything below about 5, you're always a bit suspect about what the water content is, because it's quite easy to put a bit of brook apple in with the proper juice, and Wessex Water Board don't charge as much as the apples do cost.
Well, that's probably true. Okay, so we've worked out then a bit about how this works. Let's talk about those cider varieties. So it's the tannin in those cider apples that make them different to what we might buy or eat.
That's right. Yeah,
and what the eastern counties use to make cider. Okay, so what cider apple types are we particularly good at in Somerset? We
are absolutely fantastic at all cider apple types in Somerset. We always have been. We've always had a good combination of apples. You've got your sweets, which they speaks for itself. The sweet cider apple is on the sweeter side of life. There's still a bit of tannin in the background. Right through to sharps. And when you get through to a sharp apple, you've got a sharp. Take a bite out of it. It'll dry your mouth out. It'll suck the sides of your cheeks in. But that usually makes a damn good cider. And that's what we're looking for when we go out collecting apples. We're looking for a good combination of all the different flavours from the orchard.
So why does an apple which sucks the side of your cheeks in, dries your mouth out, probably would make you spit out the bit of apple you've just taken a chunk of, why would that then translate into a nice drink?
Because of the fermentation process. It's the fermentation that does the magic. It takes all those flavours and it blends them together, and you end up, and it makes it milder when it comes out the other end. Why, I don't know. Nature at its best, isn't it?
Beautiful.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Now, I was having a chat with a guy called Phil Dowding. Do you know Phil Dowding?
Phil Dowding. I know the name.
Parsons Choice Cider.
Oh, yeah, I know.
I was having a chat with him because I popped in to pick up some cider from him. And he was saying that he used to make litres and litres of the stuff, gallons of the stuff, to put it in old money, of dry cider, and just all of his farmhouse ciders, to be honest. Yeah. And he says people aren't drinking the farmhouse nearly so much as they used to, and I suppose this is down to the big boys that we've mentioned.
This is exactly the thing. It's all down to the fact of modern people drinking it. They want something easier to drink. I don't know if you're old enough to remember back when they brought out Diamond White and Diamond Blush. When that came out, all the youngsters went mad for it. It's an alco-pop. It's loosely based on apples. And again, this is what we're seeing now with the resurgence of all the different flavoured drinks. It's easy to drink. It's loaded with sugar. Youngsters like sweet things and easy to drink. So there you go. That's why the old boys that are disappearing now, as they go, then the dry cider will go with them.
And that was what I was about to ask is, are you worried that places like, say, Parsons Choice, not that they said they were in any difficulty, but those types of places, the farmhouse producing cider areas, could they just go and not be replaced?
I think there's still a place for them. I think there still is a market for proper cider. And to be honest with you, if we get our way, in the next couple of years, we'll see a resurgence of the dry. We will see it start to come back a little bit. We're gradually getting the younger people more interested in other ciders by the fact of them getting them to drink medium ciders. Once they've tasted the medium cider with nothing in it apart from apple juice, you can see them, you can see it in their faces that they're going, hang on, this is actually quite nice. Let's try something a bit drier. And eventually you will get them back to being a bit dry. There's always will be a place. I know fanatical cider drinkers from all over the country, thanks to Facebook, and they will travel miles to go to a cider festival that's got proper cider on.
As each bottle glides off the conveyor, it is inspected for defects through a special lens. That's its last call in the factory. Then it's away to the packing room, where the bottles are dispatched, not only to the homes and hotels of Britain, but for export to cider lovers throughout the world. And though farm has given way to factory, cider is still brewed much as it was 1,000 years ago. A drink for all ages.
Brilliant video going back on the BBC archives. They put it up online, I think it would have been around October. But if you Google it, you can find it. Just search for Somerset Cider Pressing BBC Archive. You'll find it on there. Well worth a watch if you're into your cider making. It's brilliant. The whole footage, it's from 1951. And it's the bottling, the pressing, everything about the whole process is in there. Including, there's this last bit at the end, and it sort of mentioned there's this lens which magnifies all the bottles. And there's just one person sitting looking through this lens, which magnifies the bottles as they go through on the conveyor belt. And he's just looking for imperfections, and that's it. There's a big light behind it as well to light up all the bottles so you can see right through the liquid inside. Brilliant stuff. Really nice to see it. Tim Beer is my guest there we were hearing from. He is the one who's set up the promotion of Real Cider and Perry. It's a Facebook group. I'm part of it now, having found it. You can go on there as well. The promotion of Real Cider and Perry will be back with him very soon. We will also, I mentioned there, Adge Cutler, who of course was the frontman of the Wurzels until his tragic death. He worked in Coates, which was because he was from Nailsea, and he worked in the cider factory there, which is now sadly gone. But that factory, which is featured in the archive film, was where Adge Cutler from the Wurzels worked. Of course, they did several songs about cider, so I felt it was only right that we heard one of them. So that's coming up a little bit later on as well. So it's total coincidence. I'm sure Tommy didn't know. Tommy Banner from the Wurzels, who's happened to have texted in tonight. He's a listener. Hi, Tommy. He had no idea that we were featuring one of the Wurzels songs on the show tonight. Just a happy coincidence that he's there on that night where we're playing some Wurzels. So that's coming up soon. We'll hear more from Tim Beer after Aztec Camera. Somewhere in My Heart. It's coming up to 9:15. Aztec Camera, Somewhere in My Heart. It's 13 minutes to 9 o'clock. Good evening. And welcome to the show. If you are just joining us, we're halfway through a chat about cider. Proper, real cider. We're talking about social media on a Thursday. We were talking earlier on about a blog all to do with anxiety. My thanks to Kel Jean for coming in. You can listen back to that. We'll put it on BBC Sounds, so we'll have it as a separate clip, which will go up, and I will put a link up to that later if you missed it. Have a look out for that one. And right now we're talking about a Facebook page called The Promotion of Real Cider and Perry. It's run by a guy called Tim Beer, who lives on the Dorset, Devon, Somerset border. And he's been talking to me a bit about why he set it up, but also his favourite types of cider, what makes a real cider, what isn't a real cider. I thought it was only right and proper that we had some Wurzels on the show.
You wouldn't have been able to do it years ago. It was all about your little local man down the road. When I used to work on Somerset County Council in the 70s, one of my first jobs whenever we moved site was go and find the local cider maker so that we could get cider for the gang. We used to drink cider all day when we were on the roads. Nobody took a blind bit of notice of it. We even used to get the bods come out of County Hall and they'd have a drink of cider with us when we were working. It was just normal. I knew for little cider orchards all over Somerset that have all gone. They've all gone now. And there used to be a little press in each one, a few barrels, not very much else, but they're gone. So, and they'll never be replaced. But, you know, that was back in the day when they were drinking it all day. We don't do it anymore. Well, some of us don't.
So Facebook itself, then, are you able... Well, how do you use it? Are you in charge of a group or are you part of a group?
Yeah, I started up a group on Facebook a few years ago now for the promotion of cider and Perry. And it is about promoting the proper drinks.
We haven't even mentioned Perry yet. We'll come on to that
on to that one in a minute, yeah. I don't know how many I've got following now. I think we've probably got about 1,500 people around the country that are, you know, on the group. They're all pretty active. We have some little fights now and again, but 99% of the time it's all good fun.
That's just Facebook though, isn't it? That's social media.
Facebook, it is social media. We have a few fights, but most of the time, you know, we do actually just share good information about where the cider is around the country. I've got quite a big database on there at the moment with all the cider makers around the country, probably 100 or more, and that's been added to as and when I can sit down and do it.
How does Somerset compare then? You said around the country, obviously Herefordshire and Kent come to mind as other big cider makers. Are we the top of the tree in Somerset?
That's a difficult question.
You're going to offend someone here.
I'm not going to offend anybody here because I had a little fallout with a chap from Shepton Mallet not long back about what makes traditional cider traditional. Now, they've been making cider in Kent for centuries, the same as we've been making cider down here. So as far as they're concerned, what they make is a traditional cider. If you go to Norfolk, they make cider, it's a traditional cider. So every cider, regardless of where it's made in the country, has got an equal place within the drinking population. It will vary. It's ever so light in Norfolk. It's ever so light in Kent. It's what apples they get. You come down here, it's heavier tannins, more acid. But they're all equally as good as each other. And, you know, just get used to it. They're all traditional.
That is the most diplomatic answer I think I've ever heard. It's very good.
But it's honest.
Yeah, I take your point.
It's totally honest. They're making cider in Scotland now. You know, they haven't long been doing it, I don't think. But it will become known as traditionally Scottishly made. So what more do you want?
Yeah. Surely, as a cider fan, we should just be pleased there is so much cider being made.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that is the key to it.
Yeah.
The more that's made, the better, to be honest with you. You know, we're making a little bit of a fight back now towards the big boys. And they better watch us because the craft cider maker is on the up. Big time. And they are going to have to look to their laurels because we will have them. We will sort them out. We will get this 35% apple juice, 65% water thing finished. It's not right. They're cheating the customers every day of the week by doing that.
Fighting talk from the craft cider producers.
Too right.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting to meet you. Let's briefly talk about Perry as well while we're here, because Perry is pears, isn't it?
Perry's pears.
Is it exactly the same as cider, other than it's just a different fruit?
Same process. Mm-hmm. Exactly the same process.
You don't see it on sale nearly as much, do you, Perry? Perry?
Not proper Perry, no. Friend of mine over in the street at Hex, they make a lot of Perry. They make some really good Perry. And unusually, Perry's usually got quite a sweetness to it because of the sorbitol that is in the pears. It doesn't ferment out, so you get natural sweetness. But they've found an orchard with an old Perry pear called Rock, and that is as dry can be. It's absolutely wonderful. So you've got the Perry flavours, but it's dry, and it sucks your cheeks in. It's wonderful stuff.
That's the sort of thing you like.
I do.
Picking
I love
up
it.
from you now.
Yeah.
Great. And so that we can pick that up in street, can we?
You can pick that at Hexton Street. Yeah, Rock. They've usually got 2 or 3 other good Perrys. There's other people around the countryside making Perry in Somerset. It tends to be more sort of Hereford, Worcestershire area where the Perry pears are at their best. To be honest with you, but again, you know, some people say, well, to be called Perry, it's got to be made from Perry pear. No, rubbish. To me, any pear that's fermented out ends up as Perry. Mm-hmm. You know, why should we say any different? The guy in Norfolk that's picking pears and making a pear drink, he's not going to turn around and say, well, it's called pear this or pear that. He's going to say it's Perry. Mm-hmm. Good luck to him.
What about this one? I want to talk about this. You've brought us in, thank you very much, by the way, a bottle of something called Great Tit Medium. It's got a picture of a great tit on the front of it. Sunshine in a glass. So this is one of your own ciders here, Tim, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
So tell me about this one. It's quite a pale colour, isn't it? It's sort of a very bright yellow or almost see-through-ish.
It is. It's ever so pale. It's an orchard that I discovered last year between Crewkern and the A303. Lovely old orchard, right by a church. And one row of trees, little red ones, and I thought, well, let's have a go. See, we'll do them as a single and see what turns out. They fermented out really, really light, fantastic flavours. But the unusual thing was when we were processing it into the bottles, it went green. And then it changed back to a pale yellow after we'd finished working with it. But it is just wonderful, and I can't find out what the apple is.
Oh, wow. Gosh, so what do you think happened there, the change of colour? Have you ever seen that before?
I've never seen it before in my life. I've never seen it change. I've seen it change, but not to the extent of pale yellow to green and then back to pale yellow.
And that was during the fermentation process?
No, that was after the fermentation.
Right, yeah.
That was when we were processing it into the bottles.
Wow. So the drink shouldn't have been changing chemically. It was still exactly the same drink. It was just changing colour.
The only difference, the only thing that it could be was oxidisation. Yeah. So the air was getting at it while we were working it. And then as soon as we'd finished it and put it into the bottles, it went again.
How funny.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you very much. For people who want to find out more about you on Facebook, what was the name of the group, Tim?
It's the Promotion of Cider and Perry.
I shall be finding it, and I shall be giving you a big old like later on today. And then for those who want to try your cider, where can we find you there?
You'll have to search me out on events and shows around the place. I hardly do any wholesale nowadays.
Gosh, so this is quite a rare bottle I've got in my hand here.
Yeah,
then,
there's
is it?
not very
Or-
much of it.
I will treat it as such. Thank you
Yeah.
very much. Tim, lovely to meet you. Thank you very much.
And you.
And do you drink cider every day? Is that going too far?
I do actually. Yeah.
What have you got on lined up tonight? Do you have a different one every night?
There's some. I'm still getting through some Stoke Red that I found last year, tucked in the corner. Barrel of cider is 5-year-old. Dry as dry, absolutely gorgeous.
Brilliant. Well, look, I think a night round your house, Tim, sounds like it would be a heck of a night. Lovely to meet you. Thank you so much for coming in, and
No
all the
worries.
best to you.
Yeah, lovely.
Everybody, drink up the cider, drink up the cider. For tonight we'll marry we knock the future door.
Tim Beer, with help from the Wurzels.
One more time.
Sing along, come on.
Cider, drink up the cider. For tonight we'll marry we knock the future door and roll over the clover. Oh, the corn that cut in so big and so Thank you, my darlings. Thank you all very much. Hope to see you all again. Thank you, my dears. Good night. Good night, you all.
Wonderful stuff from the Wurzels. That is, of course, Drink Up the Cider. And we heard from Tim Beer from the promotion of Real Cider and Perry. You can find it on Facebook.